So let's start. Which group would like to go first? Group one or group two?
We can
I
go
think we can go
first.
first. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. Group one.
group
We
one
can
will
go
go first.
first.
Okay.
Sure, go ahead.
So today our group number one is presenting Southwest Airline, and as the first slide, we are going over the culture of the company. Southwest succeeded because culture was. Do we have the slides on the
Mhm.
screen?
I
No.
don't I don't
I
think
don't see them.
so.
Yeah, I started, but I don't see the slides. So if we could please have somebody share the slides.
Okay, give me 1 second. You guys able to see that?
Yes, thank you. Today, Group 1 is presenting Southwest Airlines. And our first slide is talking about the culture of Southwest Airlines and what made it successful. Because culture was an operating system, teamwork, humor, and family spirit drove internal performance. And the relentless customer-first approach built loyalty that competitors struggled to replicate. That kind of culture made Southwest one of the most admired low-cost employers in aviation. Forbes actually praised Southwest for being one of the best places to work for. Uh, However, markets evolve. The expectations of both employees and passengers have shifted dramatically. Customers today want structure, personalization, and digital convenience. I'm sorry, this is not, you guys, thank you. Employees value clear boundaries, predictability, and more benefits. Priorities that didn't define the early Southwest workforce. There is competitive pressure. New airlines have reset the low-cost benchmark. JetBlue, for example, Breeze proved that low fares can coexist with assigned seats, entertainment, and connectivity. These features were once differentiators, but now they are baseline expectations for many younger travelers. Strategic framework. So the retirement of Herb Kelleher, who is co-founder and also the CEO, is part of the narrative, but not the root cause. The real drivers and generational economics and competitive the redefinition of what low cost means. The strategic task ahead is evolution, ensuring the culture scales and translates rather than erodes. Um, we are not discussing erasing the culture of Southwest, which made it so powerful, but we are discussing modernizing the expression of that power.
Thank you, G. So I'm gonna introduce a passive analysis for the airline industry. Through my research and the readings, the case I read, um, I found out politically airline industry is heavily regulated by the government. As the case mentioned, the FAA, they make it the regulation make it like very difficult for airlines to enter the market. For example, Southwest faced years of legal challenges and even FAA intervention intervention just day before their first flight. So I think the the threat of the government regulation, can be used to block new entrants, and also politically, um, but there's also opportunities. Once the airlines survive in these hurdles, this regulation can be actually benefit to those established airline company by limiting those competitions. And also, there's another example mentioned the case that post-crisis government environment creates a additional pressure on demand. The case showed that after 911, passenger traffic dropped sharply. But however, those crises also create opportunity. I found out this outside of the case, which is government. Sometimes um, they will like have those subsidies for to financially support those airline company. So I also put opportunities on the PowerPoint for like those post-crisis government environment. So here it comes to the economic side. Um, so I think the airline industry is sensitive to the recessions because also as the case mentioned, after when the recessions come, the passenger traffic drop and the demand also drop. So it's like a challenging situation for the airline industry. And the other case is the fuel price. When the fuel cost increase, the profitability drop. But for the industry wide, it's a threat. But in Southwest case, they lock in the price. They make the price uh at like 51 dollar, while the whole industry they have the fuel price with like 100 or something. So uh that could be a economy factor. And here comes to a socially factor that um customer expect more service at a low price because their Southwest competitor like JetBlue, they they maintain the same price but they offer more service, which is change customer like expectation that uh make Southwest approach begin to look like Quincy. That's what I mentioned in the case. Um, and also as not only the customers expectation changing, their employees expectation also changing. Their low cost culture is not as sustainable as before because when employee they come in a company, they are not uh, they are not grow like as like the previous employee, like they are adopted to those low cost culture. So when they are not like accept those as low as like the salary before. That's also mentioned in the case, but I didn't do any like other resource outside resources. But um yeah, that will be the social factor. Could you go to the next slide? And in terms of the technology factor, technology has mainly affected the airline through like the cost reduction. Company benefit from the online ticket purchasing, while cases described as cutting out the middleman and reducing transaction cost. Also, from the outside research I did, investing in the newer technology as new aircraft presenting a trade-off, which is improve the long-term efficiency but creates a short-term capital burden. And the next is the legal system. It can be used like strategically by those big brand in the industry like Delta, something like that, to block the entry, as seen when the Southwest faced to like repeated lawsuit intended to delay their launch. So in addition, labor contract increase like legal rigidity, union agreement raise the labor costs, and it might reduce the managerial flexibility. And the environmental factor also putting increasing pressure on airline. Through my research, I found out that industry depends on like heavily on fossil fuel that contribute about like 2 to 3% of global carbon emissions. And as those government tighten the environmental rules, airlines are forced to absorb higher costs. And I put an example here, which is the European Union. They they put out a emission trading system that require airline to purchase carbon credit that will be add more expenses to the airline company.
Okay, so in this slide, I talk about a situation that stood out to me the most in this case. So during a fare war, a competitor drastically lowered ticket prices, but instead of reacting in a typical way, Southwest did something creative. They gave customers a choice, either buy the cheaper ticket or pay more and receive a free bottle of whiskey. This showed that Southwest didn't just compete on price, but they also cared about the customer's personality and their experience. It reflects Keller's leadership styles, where having fun and thinking differently and staying true to the company's culture mattered more even in tough t times. The situation also shows how Southwest's culture helped they stand out and succeed when other airlines struggled. So my question is to you guys is if you were a customer, what would you guys choose? Would you guys take the cheaper ticket or choose the free bottle of whiskey?
A cheaper ticket.
Okay, yeah, I think most of us would do that.
So should we copy the copycats? Actually, I would say no, definitely no. And the reason why it is the Southwest airline company is like their strategy is low cost and high turnaround efficiency. Adding services, for example, assigned seats, baggage transfer, and personal entertainment systems. Uh, all of these will increase the cost and lower the turnaround efficiency, which it won't miss the company's strategy. What should we do? For the company, I would say they need innovation, right? They are the first low-cost airline company, so they have already done a innovation. And for now, for this situation, for this threat, they need another innovation. And if they got it, they solve the problem. They need something unique instead of just like copying each other. And as a customer, I would say I prefer no changes. What I need is like from point to point, from city to city, by the lowest cost and the standard services. For the lowest cost, the Southwest company have the lower ticket price, and they have and they don't have to pay the baggage fee. So based on that, as a customer, we prefer no changes.
Okay, so looking at the case, there are three main ways I would attack Southwest if I was a competitor. First, Southwest has no frills service. The no frills service looks outdated. The case mentions competitors like JetBlue are offering the same low fares but with better amenities and with like things like TVs and assigned seats. I would focus on matching their prices while offering more features to attract customers away. Second, Southwest cost advantage are eroding. The case shows two major problems here. Their labor costs are skyrocketing as flight attendants got 31% raises, and now their cost per seat mile are actually higher than some major airlines at 3.2 cents. And their fuel hedging advantage is temporary. Kelly admits that they couldn't lock in low fuel prices for 2009 and 2010, so they'll have to raise fares soon. So since the big carriers have been cutting wages and Southwest fuel advantage is disappearing, I would wait for these cost advantages to erode completely and then compete aggressively on the price. And then finally, I would focus on markets Southwest doesn't serve well. So they only do point-to-point domestic flights, as we saw in the case. So I would build up an international routes and connecting flights for business travelers who need those options. Um, the case describes two main strategies Southwest used to protect against rising costs. The first and most obvious one is fuel hedging. In 2007, Southwest locked in their fuel price at $51 per barrel for 2008. The case points out that crude oil actually hit $162 per barrel that year, so this saved them a massive amount of money. While other airlines had many more than 20 fare increase in 2008, Southwest only had four modest ones because of their hedging strategy. The second strategy is using only one type of aircraft, the Boeing 737. The case explains this reduces cost in a bunch of ways, like less expensive maintenance, smaller parts and inventory, simpler crew training, and more flexible workers. Most of the major airlines that fly different types of planes have way higher maintenance costs and complicated training programs. So by sticking to one aircraft, Southwest basically hedged against rising operational costs across the board. And that's our presentation. Thank you, guys.
Good job, guys. Great work. Um, in pastoral analysis, you could have also added in in the environmental thing. Can you stop sharing? Let me share my. For some reason, Southwest flights are actually not the cheapest ones. If you observe, actually, uh, no, Frontier and Spirit and all, they are mostly cheaper than Southwest. Uh, Almost always, I would say. So you see this thing, minus 13% emissions, minus 16% emissions. There's a specific term for it. I'm not able to recall, but one of the groups in this fall semester, actually presented on United Airlines, I guess. I don't remember the exact. I think United. So they talked about it in detail. So you could have shown this as example, the environmental factor, that how environmental, concern is increasing, and people factor that in while choosing the airlines. But that is my question. Do you actually pay attention to this, or do you make your decision depending on this when you choose a flight?
No,
Anybody?
not really.
No.
I guess it kind of depends on if you're one of those like environmental kind of people.
I mean, somewhere, I mean, all of us to some degree care about environment, but I highly doubt that very rarely anybody would be choosing flights on the basis of this. I mean, if two flights have the same exact characteristics, same time, same cost, and everything, then maybe you can probably the last factor. But otherwise, I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, the awareness is definitely increasing, right? So,
But
and social, huh?
I feel like if that flight is still gonna happen, then does it really matter if I get that one or another one?
Right, 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 exactly. Yeah. Um, yeah, good point actually. Right. If it's any like, that is the argument when veg versus non-veg, veg versus meat debate happens. Some people say that, right? When the animal is already killed, that why not eat it? Right? The same kind of thing. As a Yeah, I have some comments on social and legal and political as well, but that I'll come to that later when I uh, show my slides. Okay. Before that, group two can go next. So who's gonna share the screen? Anybody from group two can share the screen.
I'm gonna share it.
Okay, go ahead. Next.
Okay. Ooh, just want to pull it up. Okay, can we see it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it won't let me hit it.
Click on
Wait.
slideshow there. The slideshow.
Oh, there we go.
Hi everyone, we're Group 2 and today we will be presenting on the Southwest Airlines case. This case looks at how Southwest was able to stand out. Wait, can you go to the next slide?
Yeah.
This case looks at how Southwest was able to stand out in a very competitive airline industry by keeping costs low, keeping things simple, and building a strong company culture. It also brings up the question of whether this approach still works today, especially with rising costs and changing customer expectations. Southwest itself set itself apart by making a few choices. Instead of using the traditional hub and spoke system, it focused on point to point flights, flew only one type of aircraft, and limited its service offerings to keep costs down. These choices helped the company run more efficiently and offer lower prices to customers. However, what really made them different was their culture, but we'll get more into that on our next slide. Knowing all of this, if you had to choose between cheaper tickets or more comfort and added services, which one would you pick? That trade-off is a big part of the decision Southwest had to make. With that in mind, the next part of our presentation looks more closely at how important culture was to Southwest's success and whether it should stay the same or change as the company grows and faces new challenges.
So Southwest culture was definitely very important to their success. The culture that Southwest created among its employees and customers shaped their success and helped them rise in an industry that is very difficult to break into. Southwest implemented a people-first philosophy. When interviewing for employees, the CEO, Kelleher, focused on people's personality and humor rather than hiring just based on skill. He even went to make the process even more friendly as he treated each potential employer as a future customer. So even the people he rejected, he did in a very soft manner. As personality was important, the employees were able to freely express themselves and show off their unique personalities so that they could enjoy their job more. This made employees feel a lot more comfortable working and created more positive interactions with customers. And for customers, this meant that their suggestions were always heard and that they were getting the best deals. With employees feeling motivated to work, they can better serve customers, keeping them happy. Sorry, can you go back to the previous slide, please? This even landed Southwest on Fortune magazine's Best Places to Work in America list. So, although there has been a slump in profits, Southwest should not change their culture as it has been working for the past few decades, and it has been the reason they were able to break into the airline industry as well as grow within it. Instead, I believe that Southwest might have deviated from the core culture recently, as it was revealed in the text that many of the older workers have retired and the newer employees are not familiar with the struggle that Southwest faced starting up. To combat this, Southwest should reinstate the passion older employees had and bring back some of the techniques Kelleher used, such as hiring for a positive attitude. To help with profits, Southwest should not change their core culture, but rather look for ways to work with the market. Next slide, please.
Continuing on culture, the highlight of the case for me was seeing how Southwest's culture showed up in employees' everyday behavior. One anecdote that really stood out to me was how the employees handled flight delays by entertaining passengers, such as giving a prize to the person with the largest hole in their sock or surprising customers by hiding in the overhead luggage bins. This stood out to me because it shows that Southwest culture wasn't something just written on paper, but it actually influenced how the employees acted in real situations. Instead of letting the delays create frustration, employees were encouraged to use creativity to improve the customer experience. Would something as little as this make a delay feel less frustrating for you? Regardless of whether you answered yes or no, what's really important is that this approach didn't require any additional spending. Southwest was able to improve customer satisfaction through employee behavior rather than offering compensation or upgrades. In the long run, this helps keep costs low while still building customer loyalty. This anecdote also explains why competitors struggled to copy Southwest. While other airlines could copy parts of their operating model, they couldn't easily replicate a culture that motivated employees to act this way. Next slide.
Now for the pestle analysis, starting off with the political factor, I think the government shutdown, the most recent one, this past October to November, is a perfect example for Southwest. So for those who don't know, this government shutdown that happened most recently was because Congress and the White House couldn't agree on a federal budget or a temporary funding bill before the deadline. Um, Another example is in late 2023 and in early 2024. But basically, those government shutdowns happened and lasted over a month, and this past one being the longest in US history. But basically, during that time, many federal workers were furloughed or working without pay, including our active duty military and the Federal Aviation Administration, or the FAA. So, air traffic controllers. So, with fewer controllers on duty, lots of flights were delayed and airport operations became slower and less predictable. So, Southwest, which operates, a large domestic schedule every day, it was severely impacted by these delays and the operational disruptions because of the shutdown. And this is a clear threat because even though the airline isn't responsible for the shutdown, it still basically absorbed the consequences through the delays, and it created a lot of frustration with the customers, but also the airport staff. And it shows how dependent airlines still rely on government stability. Now, in terms for the economic factors, think of the tariffs and trade policies and how they affect, the aircraft part supply chain. It's another threat because it can raise costs for the airlines. And, when it comes to the aircraft parts, I read on, um, I think uh, one of the industry warnings that came out, it was like a website I read recently from, I think, Fox 26. They warned that tariffs could increase unit costs and even create safety concerns if parts become harder to get. And this is especially risky because, safety is the number one priority when it comes to flying, and maintenance is critical. So airlines are already operating on thin margins, and even small increases in the cost can really add up and impact the pricing and profitability in the long run. And then in terms for socially, recently Southwest has been facing backlash over their changes on the free check bag policy that, even the previous group mentioned. And this can also be seen as a potential weakness. That's because this policy has been a big part of their brand for a long time, and a lot of loyal customers, again, are frustrated because of this, and social media really amplifies this reaction. So even though small changes like the free bag policy can turn into big public conversations, but I would also argue that this could be an opportunity for Southwest if they find another way to reframe or change the added value somewhere else to retain the customers. So, customer expectations and brand identity are really important for Southwest. And then in terms for the technology standpoint, they've been investing a lot in mobile apps and self-service tools. Things like online check-ins are really useful, and it's a clear opportunity for airlines to adopt technology faster so that they can operate more smoothly and improve customer satisfaction. And this is also an area where Southwest can gain a competitive edge. Slide, please. Oh, I also had a question for the class. I just used mobile apps as an example, but I was curious if anybody else found like other examples like automation or AI or aircraft technology.
Yeah, like in terms of like AI, I guess they use like facial scanners now. So like instead of like showing your ID, everything's like manually on your phone. So I guess like that's a way for like identification at the airport that they could use.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think the online check-in on mobile apps is super convenient because I know in the past you would have to show up like 3, 4 hours earlier to the airport versus if you check in mobily, you skip the whole line. And then for environmentally, Southwest is also growing or is undergoing pressure to reduce their carbon emissions. Again, that was mentioned from the previous group, but Southwest came out and made a statement on their website to have a goal to reach net zero emissions by 2050. And Southwest admits, this is verbatim on their website, that it will require long-term planning and strategic changes. So, sustainability is also becoming both a public expectation and a business requirement in the airline industry. And I think this is a double-edged sword in terms of being a threat and opportunity because the sustainability initiatives require long-term investment and planning, so that can be very costly. And but on the other side, the public image, complying with, the future regulations and appealing to the environment, I think would be a benefit for the conscious travelers, for those who care about the carbon emissions when they book their flights. And then finally, the legal factors. Um, I think this part really ties into the business model that Southwest made clear from the reading, their focus on employee satisfaction. But if you didn't know, Southwest operates under the Railway Labor Act, one of many acts that they're under. But basically, that governs the labor relations in the airline industry. And this act affects how the company handles union negotiations, things like their wages and scheduling for their employees. So this act protects the employees, but it also limits how quickly Southwest can make changes to, schedules and changing their wages. So this could be challenging for Southwest also, since it is a fast-moving industry, and as the previous group mentioned, it can be subject to a lot of things out of their control, like the government shutdown. Slide, please.
If I were competing against Southwest, I wouldn't try to copy them exactly. Instead, I would keep prices low, but add a few features that Southwest doesn't offer, such as assigned seating, entertainment, or loyalty perks. The case mentions that JetBlue is an example of an airline that did this successfully and attracted customers who still wanted low fares, but also wanted a better experience. I'd also focus on routes where Southwest's advantage isn't as strong anymore, such as longer routes or more crowded airports, which this could take away some of their market share. Next slide. Southwest also did a good job with managing rising costs. One major strategy that they mentioned in the case was fuel price hedging. They locked in fuel prices ahead of time so that when the costs spiked sharply in 2008, Southwest wasn't hit as hard as other airlines. And another strategy is just their overall operating model. They use one type of airplane, they fly mostly direct routes and limit extra services. So this keeps costs lower overall and makes it easier for Southwest to handle higher costs compared to its competitors.
And I am just going to be talking about whether or not we should copy the copycats. So some of the things that would be changing if Southwest did decide to do that. It would be the end of free checked bags, which they have already ended as of May of this year. They will be having assigned seating come the new year. I believe the date that I saw online was January 26th of 2026 that they will start to do assigned seating. Boarding groups will change from groups A, B, and C to groups 1 through 8. And then there will also be fare bundles like you would see on United and Delta. And for Southwest, those would be basic, choice preferred, and extra. With copying all of these things from bigger airlines, there are, as we've said, there will be more costs incurred because of this. With the fare bundles, due to having different levels of fare, you will also have different levels of amenities, including premium snacks and food and more legroom for different groups, and also with assigned seating and the end of checked bags, that also incurs more operating costs, and they also plan to potentially change do baggage change from their flights to other ones in terms of connecting flights with other airlines. And all of these things incur more costs for the airline as a whole. So just a question for the class, like if you were a loyal Southwest customer and you've been with the company for a while and enjoyed the service you were getting prior, would you want the changes that Southwest is planning to make?
Answer this question, please. This is actually the main question of the case, right?
My answer would be no.
Okay, others?
I think the end of free check bags is a problem.
Mhm. I think we can all agree that these changes are not ones that customers would like or prefer, especially since there are loyal customers who are loyal because they know that with Southwest they're going to get from point A to point B. Their bags will be checked for free. They don't have to worry about, while it may be a perk to have, premium snacks and drinks or entertainment systems. People who fly with Southwest really just want to get from their departure to their arrival without the rest of the fluff and frills that other airline companies provide, which is why they booked Southwest in the first place. And that is the end of our presentation.
Great presentation, great points. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, the main point is that Southwest flights are short, right? They're within the US. There are not many international destinations. They do fly to Mexico and a few countries in the Central America, but they don't fly beyond that, and they don't fly to Canada either. So the flights are generally short. So people are fine if they don't get in-flight entertainment or food and all. So they would prefer having uh, low prices than have these amenities or services, right? That is what my logic says. Another thing that I would have really liked you guys talk about was lack of air traffic controllers. Maybe you could have talked about that in pastel analysis. I don't know whether you guys have heard about it or not, but US has severe crisis of lack of air traffic controllers. And I watched a 10-minute video a few months ago and in detail, like they had explained in detail, and it was horrific. Like the crisis is very deep and it's an urgent need, actually.
Professor, I was gonna say that too. Like that's a reason why during the government shutdown it was really bad, not just because they weren't getting paid, but because they were already understaffed. Um, I'm actually also a pilot, so I know how like crucial it is to like operate with air traffic control. Like usually some regional airports don't have air traffic control personnel already. So, I mean, it's fine because to be a pilot, you need to know like how to look out for others. But when you have that many passengers, it would be useful to have somebody in the tower to look out for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so you could have, I mean, talked about that, or you guys should, after the class, if you're interested, please watch videos about it. Or Shannon, you can share some links, or I can find some videos I would share. Right, and one more thing that I just read yesterday or day before yesterday, very interesting, is so you know how um, you non-passengers, that is the people who accompany you to airport, they cannot go beyond security checkpoints, right? They cannot accompany the passengers to the gates, right? And that rule changed after 9/11. So I watch Friends. I'm a big fan of Friends. Right. So the episodes which were shot before uh, 9/11, they have like you can see that all these characters, uh, Jennifer Aniston, Rachel, and Ross, and all they accompany people to the security gates. But after 9/11, the rules change, and only the passengers are allowed to go or pass through the security checkpoints and go till the gate. But just yesterday or day before yesterday, I read in news that several US airports are now reintroducing the programs that non-passengers can go beyond security checkpoints. Right? They can go till the gates, or they can go inside the airport to the shops and eat or buy something. So that was very interesting. So yeah, these were the 2 points I wanted to share regarding your presentation. And let me start mine now. Okay. Right. So at the start of the case, when you would have read, you would have thought that this case is about Gary Kelly, the way it starts. But it turns out that it's about Herb Kelleher. It's like his biography at Southwest, right? So, what other low cost airlines can we think of besides Southwest?
You kind of showed it, Frontier and Spirit.
Right. Frontier, Spirit, JetBlue, Ryanair, Akasa, outside US, Ryanair, Akasa Air, right? So, what is the crux of this case? So, basically, what happens during fall and spring semester is that I teach a case. One case correlates to one chapter, right? So, each chapter we read, in that lecture, there would be, so if it's a 3 hour lecture, there would be one chapter and case related to it. So if it's a cooperative strategy, then cooperative strategy related case. If it's a CSR strategy, then CSR strategy related case, and so on and so forth. So this case is basically, if you uh, would have noticed, it's about the internal resources, right? Internal assessment, internal environment assessment. So basically, how Southwest is converting its resources and capabilities to core competencies, right? Resources it has is employees and work culture. It's converting them into core competencies, and as you guys mentioned, I think both the groups mentioned that uh, it's a tough industry to get into, to enter, right? So barriers to entry are pretty high. One because of regulation, and two because of capital required. You need a lot of money to enter the industry, right? So we saw those four factors that converts a capability to core competency. Do you remember that? Valuable. What are others? Valuable, rare, non-imitable, and non-substitutable, right? So in this case, the work culture is non-imitable because of causal ambiguity, because it's tacit, it's not encoded, it's difficult to actually copy. So that is why it provides a barrier for the competitors to imitate it. and that gives the competitive advantage to Southwest, right? So why they started with taxes? What was the benefit of taxes? Is one, it's large and populous, and that results in, it's the only airlines in the world in the top 10 whose market capitalization is bigger than its annual revenues. What is market capitalization? Many of you are from finance backgrounds, should know. What is market capitalization?
I think it's the share price times the number of shares outstanding.
Right. Share price into number of shares. That is market capitalization, right? So it's the only firm whose market capitalization is bigger than its annual revenues. And then 1978 Airline Deregulation Act also helped Southwest. So what was 1978 Airline Deregulation Act? So till 1978, government used to dictate and tell you what price you would set, what fare you would set, and which markets to serve. That is, government will decide the routes and the price both. But 1978 it changed. They deregulated it, and airlines had complete freedom to set the routes and set the fares as well. But what happens in pure capitalistic markets, that if it was left to if it was left completely to airlines to decide which routes they want to cover and what price, then they would not cover the routes like upstate New York, North Dakota, Wyoming, Alaska, Montana, right? So that is why they included an essential air service program, which means that small communities continue to receive a minimum level of scheduled air service. That is where you need a tinge of socialism or communism and government to step in, right? So that was Airline Deregulation Act. Now let's analyze the airline industry and in particular Southwest, that how this industry is very fixed cost business industry. That is a big percentage is fixed cost. So first of all, um, Southwest focuses on all the airlines focus on maximum flight capacity because these are mainly passenger airlines and not courier airlines like mail, right? Cargo, I mean. So uh, they get maximum revenue from passengers. And how Southwest is able to um, have such flexible rules like no cancellation fee even if you cancel just a few hours before the flight takes off, because uh, what I mean, that not just for Southwest, even for others, which is a flexi fare program, which means as you get close to the date, the fares increase drastically, right? So, what are the fixed costs involved? So, there are several fixed costs, uh, like the contracts. So, one is the employee contract, like other airlines pay that if we sell seats, then you would get revenue. But in case of Southwest, they pay on the basis of certain number of flights, right? And they have other contracts as well, like fuel costs, which they cannot break even during COVID. Though fuel cost is not applicable during COVID, but they cannot break other contracts like airport contracts, like gates, using gates. So they cannot break the contract even if during COVID the flights are not operating, right? and their main revenues coming from passengers, a small, very small number from freight, and some other fares as well, some other revenues as well, like credit cards and all. But that is also like $1 or $2 billion. That is not very high number. And fuel costs are like $5 billion out of $20 billion. So if you do the calculation, you would find that the profit margin is 15%, which is good, but not very great and very sensitive to passenger traffic. Now let's analyze deeper. Which segment do you think is the target segment of Southwest? Business travelers or leisure travelers? Just think out aloud. It's fine. Does not have to be very accurate. I mean, these questions are anyway a bit subjective. But what do you think?
Probably leisure travelers, since they want to cut their costs where they can and they might be spending more money on hotels or whatnot.
Right, right. Anybody thinks business travelers?
I was gonna say business because business travelers just want to get to the place that they want to go and they don't maybe necessarily care about all the added amenities like a leisure traveler would.
I would
Yeah, Alexa. Yes.
Oh, I was just gonna agree with Catherine that business travelers probably like Southwest because a lot of times businessmen and women have quick turnarounds and sometimes just need to go for a meeting or for a banquet or anything or even just a conference. Whereas leisure travelers, they're spending extended periods of time where some business people might really just be going for like a mid-week meeting that everybody needs to be at and then need to return back to their home base right after.
Hmm. Okay. What about this argument? Um, that if it's a business meeting, then most likely your company is paying, so you don't care about the cost. You can, I mean, it's going to be reimbursed, so you can actually choose the expensive flights. What do you think? So they might actually not choose Southwest or Frontier or Spirit, and they're fine if they choose American Airlines or Delta or United.
I do agree with that, especially because I know my mom, she works for a pharmaceutical company here in Jersey, but a lot of times she does have to travel, and most times the travel is paid for by the company. But I do know sometimes she has consultants that work for her, and if she would like the consultants to come to any of the meetings or any temps to come, a lot of times it's not directly covered under the company because they're not direct company employees. So in that case, sometimes she's given a budget for their travel, and it's more budget friendly to have them go on Southwest or Frontier to ensure that they're able to come, but also that, it's still staying within the budget that she's given.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that
I
case, then also, yeah, yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I think it's more for leisure because travelers worry about the cost. That's why they would choose Southwest because the fare is the low fare. And then also they do choose it because they don't have to worry about paying for the extra bags or anything like that. So I think it's more for leisure than business.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I personally inclined towards the leisure one. Uh, that leisure travelers would choose Southwest more. Also because I haven't flown Southwest ever. I'm mostly from Spirit and Frontier, but I've heard from people that Southwest seats and journey is more comfortable than Frontier and Spirit's flights. So they are on a bit like more expensive than Spirit and Frontier, but they're also more comfortable. That is what I've heard from people. And I mean, there is no right or wrong answer. We are just discussing. So no points for correct or wrong answers here. And which segment do you think would bounce back first after COVID? Business travelers or leisure travelers?
Definitely leisure because business was it's so much different now than it used to be prior to COVID. And a lot of the business people, like right after COVID, they didn't need to travel as much. So I think yeah, maybe I'm wrong, but no, I think it's leisure.
Oh, so,
I was just
so
thinking about it. I was like, yeah, actually, they did go back to business, but no, not really. Business is so much different now than it used to be.
so you mean to say that it has gone on, a lot of things have gone online, huh?
Yes. The need for traveling and having in-person meetings, it's not as needed as it used to be. So I don't think that they were the ones to bounce back right after COVID.
Okay. Anybody else? No. By the way, if someone drops from the class, one has to inform me. You cannot just drop just like that without informing me. I know that I've already seen that Jackson is not here. I think he didn't join at all. And GIO is also not here, I guess. One more person I need to check who it is. But yeah, I mean, you should realize that there are points for attendance and participation. So if you're not attending the class, you would lose that points, and especially if you haven't informed me. So just let them know if they are in your group that, they won't get points for attendance and participation for today. All right. So was Southwest culture critical to the continued success? Should they continue with it or tweak their culture with changing times? I guess most of you said no, they should not change, right?
I
And
think we said that
Mhm.
they should adapt and not completely change it, but they should adapt it to the changing needs of the customers and employees because they all have different expectations now that they had before, mainly due to the competitors like JetBlue and all the other um, airlines that were able to offer more for the same cost or even less. So I think they could adapt and not change it completely because then it was critical to their success to begin with.
right. And they're already changing, right? They are changing their back policy, they are changing their seating policy, they're already changing a lot of things. Let's see how it pans out for them. Then pastoral analysis. Uh, so political and legal. I mean, legal thing we already saw that, and both the groups mentioned as well that how in initial phase, uh, competitors was trying to stifle its launching, right? And they also had something called Right Amendment, which basically restricted flights from their headquarters, which was Dallas Love Field Airport. And what was Right Amendment? Basically, it limited flights with more than 56 seats to destinations within Texas and neighboring states. So you cannot fly longer flights. And it was amended in 2014. And Southwest, being Southwest, in Southwest fashion, they celebrated the repeal by having a countdown on their headquarters building. And other airlines also joined in. So yeah, these kind of changes, like political and legal. can affect airlines, and also the points that you guys said in your presentations, like tariffs, geopolitical tensions. So all those political reasons also can affect airlines, right? Then economic and social. So in economic and social changes, like basically the per capita income would affect inflation, and per capita income would affect the flying pattern, right? So if there are more immigrants, more students, or if the disparity is increasing, then people would prefer choosing low cost airlines more than high end airlines, right? The environmental, if suddenly tomorrow everybody decides that we will follow what Greta Thunberg says and we will all boycott airlines and we will only choose trains or transport, then yeah, it would mean havoc for the airline industry. Then technology has reduced the need of business travel, as like Elena said, that if there are more online meetings and less in-person meetings, then it would affect uh, the business of airlines. And technology has also helped Southwest, as it has cut middlemen like ticket agents, right? So that is another point in technology. And what is the highlight of the case for you? Mention an anecdote that stands out for you. So for me, the highlight of the case was this: that Herb Kelleher was able to convince flight attendants and schedulers to interchange or swap their positions, which I found very interesting and mind blowing. That if a boss can convince people to do this, then he really has an amazing grip on the company and deep trust with his employees, right? So that is what I felt. Then SWOT analysis. So strengths are, of course, that it's the only firm which has had consistently 47 years on trot profits. So no other airlines has ever had 47 such a long run of profits. Only during COVID in 2020 did its chain of profits break for the first time in the history. It did not earn profits, right? And but after COVID, it has again, you know, started having profits. Weakness is few international flights, but the flip side of international flights is that its whole strategy is based on short flights, not offering food, not offering in-flight entertainment, and all those things. If it started offering international flights, then it will have to change its strategy. It will have to have bigger aircrafts and all. So it will have to probably have, different strategy or two strategies then. One for short flights and one for long flights, right? So it's a gray area. Like it depends on how you see it. Opportunities, yeah, it can expand internationally. It can. I think actually from next year it is starting first transoceanic flights in cooperation with Turkish Airlines. So that is the first time that it would be having a transoceanic, transatlantic flight. Threats are, of course, fluctuation in oil prices, labor cost can rise. If, I mean, till now, it has always kept its employees happy, so they don't revolt, but you never know. Government regulations, terrorism, all those things. Right. What about the bargaining power of Southwest with its suppliers, that is Boeing? What do you think? What is the bargaining power of Southwest with Boeing strong or weak?
Think as of today, it's probably very strong since they've been in business together for such a long time.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? But I also see it this way that it is completely dependent on Boeing 737 for its carriers. That is the only aircraft it uses. It has only two options, Boeing and Airbus, and it probably won't choose Airbus because it's an American airline. Uh, so I guess Southwest is more dependent on Boeing than Boeing is dependent on Southwest, right? We'll see. We'll see another slide in the coming minutes, and we'll give you an example how. So logic behind current strategy is, it tries to shorten its turnaround time. So if Singapore Airlines, which is an international airline, average flight time is 7.5 hours, then industry average of 40 minutes is okay. But Southwest flight time is shorter, very, very short. So your turnaround time should be less so that you can fly more number of flights every day and thus earn more money, right? So if you are an employee who would give suggestion to knock off even 15 seconds from the turnaround time, they will consider it. And I will give you an example in the coming slides how. Very interesting example. And that is why it also allows to free check-in bags, not because they are doing some philanthropy or social service, but because they want to reduce turnaround time so that people don't waste time in setting up their bags in overhead cabins, right? Then they also um, save money and time by using single type of aircraft because they can train all their employees on single aircraft so they can move employees within different aircrafts, and they don't have to train them again because they are familiar with the aircraft, and they that saves fuel as well. It needs smaller hangars so they can choose uh, smaller airports of big cities, not the main airport but secondary airport, which may have smaller hangars. So all that, their strategies, we saw alignment and fit in Michael Porter's article. It's just like that. Everything is so aligned to their strategy, right? What would you do if you were a competitor? So I would say that um, one, you should definitely hedge against fuel prices, and you should negotiate contracts with employees for 10 years because imagine having no strikes or protests by workers union for 30 years in the case of Southwest, and imagine having employee union on company's side and rooting for company instead of having anger with it or issues with it, which is very rare. So I guess that is very important. And um, you guys mentioned fuel hedging, like fuel and having the same kind of aircraft, but having the contract with employees also saves you money. If you have long term contracts signed with the employees, then that also would save you money. You won't have to, when when the contracts are fixed for say 5 years or 7 years, then you won't have the uncertainty of employees asking for hike, and you would be sure of how much expenses would there be in employees compensation, employee salaries. Like, you remember the incident where Hub Kelleher kisses a flight attendant after negotiating a contract with her, right? It was mentioned uh, in the case, one incident, right? So that is the strength of Southwest, and that is what a competitor should also pursue if they have to compete with Southwest. That, have very fixed costs should be very you know insured, as in how much you're going to spend. Like like contracts should be signed for long durations for fixed costs, be it employees or be it fuel. So yeah, we already saw that they have posted continual growth for so many years, for almost 47, for almost 50 years, barring 2020. And it gives higher salaries than other airlines, like pilots and um, air hostesses and all. They get higher salaries, not as high as probably American Airlines, Delta, and all, but at least the low cost airlines, it gives the highest salaries. So, what are the key highlights or key reasons for the success of Southwest? It is customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, of course, the CEO, the Hub Kelleher was one type of plane, point to point service, low prices, and fun image. So, what is the fun image? So, you can see some examples here. Please place your oxygen mask on first before helping your child. If you have more than one child, pick which one you like best and work backwards from there. So, these are some actual quotes, actual announcements from Southwest Airlines. And here I'm going to show what 2 points I was talking about. So basically, 3 years ago, Southwest decided to start flights to Bellingham, which is a city between Vancouver and Seattle. But they pulled out, they exited that city. Why? So we know that its strategy is using smaller airports near large metropolitan areas, and it has been getting success with that strategy. But off late, there are questions on that strategy, right? That is what the case is about. And yeah, so here what I was talking about, that how it is so dependent on Boeing. So we know that Boeing has been facing issues lately. So when Boeing could not deliver the planes, Southwest was was supposed to get 80 planes, but it is now getting only 20 planes. So Southwest, um I think Southwest negotiating power is weak with Boeing because it's so dependent on Boeing. And here you see Elliott Management, a hedge fund, it amassed 10% stake in the company. Now keep this in mind when we go to the mergers and acquisition chapter. So we would study something called um, hostile takeover, and there you would be able to relate with this example, right? So this is an example of hostile takeover. That Elliott criticized Southwest for having poor policies, and giving that argument, it started it started acquisition. Just like how we are seeing in the case of Netflix, Warner Brothers, and Paramount, right? So it's kind of similar. So, um, yeah, we already know that Southwest is doing some changes in its policy and strategy, switching to assigned seats, adding seats with extra legroom, and by till 2020, Southwest planes did not have power outlets in every seat. But the more interesting example is, uh, how we saw that if an employee gives a suggestion which can knock off even 15 seconds from boarding, Southwest immediately implements that, right? So Southwest is even experimenting with adding music that plays at 120 beats per minute to encourage customers to move faster as they board. You see how innovative they are. Because if you hear faster music, you would walk faster, and that would help boarding faster. So, yeah, the more changes that they have done is they have allowed their flights to be listed on third party engines, which they were not allowing till 2022, 2023. And it's only one of the four largest US airlines to have never filed for, only one of the four largest, which has never filed for bankruptcy. So, which are the four largest US airlines? What do you think? What other three airlines could be?
Is it American, United, and Delta?
Right, correct. American, United, and Delta. Yes. So yeah, when it pulled out of that Washington town, Bellingham, people were not happy. They felt like breakup. They were so excited that Southwest is coming to their city or town, if you want to call it. So Southwest is not the only low-cost airline or budget airline which is facing these issues. Frontier Airlines is also uh, changing its policies because the profit margins on no-frill tickets is very low, so they have difficulty achieving profits. The revenues are very low. So even Frontier is switching to offering premium services. I'll skip this video. You can watch at home. I'll show you something else.
Because it's a bag. They're charging bag fees right out in the open. They're not even trying to hide it.
Bag fees in progress. Let's move. Freeze! Put those bags down!
Put your bags in the air!
You know how much you're charging for those bags?
Up to $120 round trip.
You're under arrest for attempted bagicide.
So they are changing their main USP, main policy.
They're charging bag fees right out in the
Their marketing was based on this policy, and they are changing that.
Rather have the free check bags, that's for sure, because that's mainly one reason why I still fly Southwest.
Southwest Airlines is scrapping its long-standing policy of free checked bags, a move executives once said set the budget airline apart from competitors.
That's going to make it hard for people that live on a budget. I just become a widow this year.
Per bag, $10 will be a lot. Hopefully it's not more than that.
The airline said Tuesday that most passengers will soon have to pay for checked bags unless they have a business class ticket, a Southwest credit card, or elite status in the Rapid Rewards program. Southwest hasn't released pricing yet, but the new policy applies to flights booked starting May 28th. The airline has been struggling and faces pressure from activist investors to boost profits. It recently announced plans to cut 1,750 corporate jobs, which is 15% of its workforce, the first major layoffs in its 53-year history. Southwest estimated bag fees could bring in $1.5 billion a year, but might also cost $1.8 billion in lost business from customers who chose the airline for its baggage policy.
Rather.
Remember what it was like before there was somebody else up there who loved you? There was no such thing as executive class service to Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. With first-class legroom, free cocktails for everyone, and a schedule you could depend on. Remember?
Therefore, it's one of the first advertisements. So it has been a unique uh, airline since beginning. So yeah, this was all for today. Actually, this you can watch on your own. Actually, it's like showing. I think it's mentioned in the case, right? How they decided,
We're ready for
right? This incident is mentioned in the case, right? How they fought the
round three. All right, this is the tiebreaker.
what is it called? The fist fight. Yeah, you can watch on your own. I'll skip that. So this was Southwest case, and they'll make an announcement regarding the first test, what till what chapter we are covering, and we are having it on Monday now instead of Friday, right? So we'll make an announcement, and yeah, that's all for today. If you have any questions, you can stay. Otherwise, see you tomorrow.